Hello, my friend. Before we begin, I want you to know that I understand how you're feeling. Perhaps you're going through those moments when everything feels heavy and loneliness quietly invades your life. It doesn't matter if you're surrounded by people or completely alone. I know how it can be, and I want to tell you one thing: you are not alone on this journey. I am here to walk alongside you and share something that transformed my life, something that can help you too. Loneliness, as painful as it may seem, can be an invitation to something deeper. Often, when we feel isolated, we face an internal storm of thoughts and emotions that seem uncontrollable. But, in fact, this is a moment of pause that life offers us. When I felt lost in solitude, I learned that this emptiness was not a punishment, but an opportunity to listen to myself. In silence, we can hear the whispers of our hearts, understand our pains, and discover what truly moves us. In Buddhism, loneliness is viewed in a completely different way. Instead of being a space of emptiness, it is a moment of fullness, where we can reconnect with what is most essential. This doesn't mean that the pain disappears immediately, but that it is understood as part of the human experience. I remember a cold night when I looked out the window and noticed the beauty of the silence outside. It was in that moment that I realized loneliness did not isolate me, it connected me to something greater. It's natural to resist loneliness, to try to fill it with distractions or company. However, this resistance often intensifies the feeling of isolation. When I learned to embrace loneliness, I felt an unexpected relief. Buddhism teaches that when we accept our experience without judgment, we begin to realize that loneliness is like a wave. It comes, but it also goes away. This understanding brought a sense of calm that I had never experienced before. One practice that changed my perspective was meditation. At first, it was difficult to sit with myself in silence. My thoughts seemed chaotic, and the discomfort was great. But over time, I realized that these moments were like cleaning a messy room. Gradually, things began to organize themselves. Meditation became my refuge, a space where I could simply be. I want you to know that loneliness, no matter how painful it seems now, is not permanent. It can be a portal to self-discovery, to uncovering your inner strength. Just like me, you can find a space of peace within yourself. Trust this process. Loneliness can be your greatest teacher. Loneliness often makes us believe that we are separated from the rest of the world. However, it's curious how this experience also reminds us of our common humanity. When I started to see loneliness as something we all face at some point, I realized that it didn't isolate me, it connected me. It is in shared pain that we find common ground, where we can be more compassionate with one another. In Norway, the long winters can intensify this feeling of isolation. I remember looking out the window and feeling that the world was distant, as if I were the only person awake on that silent night. It occurred to me then, somewhere another person was probably feeling the same. This idea brought an unexpected warmth to my heart. Knowing that we are not alone in our loneliness gives us the strength to carry on. Buddhism teaches us that we are all interconnected, even when we feel isolated. This interconnectedness is called interbeing. It's the idea that each person, each being, is connected as part of a larger whole. When I realized this, my loneliness transformed into something more bearable. I was not just a lost individual in the void, I was part of a web of life. Another practice that helped me was loving kindness meditation, or metta. This practice involves wishing well for yourself and others. When I mentally repeated, "May I be at peace, may I be safe, may I be happy," I began to feel an inner warmth. Expanding these wishes to others made me realize that, even alone, I could connect with those around me in subtle and meaningful ways. Loneliness reminds us that we are human, with all our vulnerabilities and needs for connection. When we understand this, we can open ourselves to being more compassionate with ourselves and others. Loneliness ceases to be a burden and becomes a bridge to something greater. Transforming loneliness into a space of healing was one of the most challenging and rewarding things I have ever done. At first, it seemed impossible. The pain was great, and negative thoughts piled up like clouds on a rainy day. But by diving into Buddhist teachings, I realized that loneliness was an opportunity for transformation. The first step was to accept solitude without trying to escape from it. This may seem contradictory, but Buddhism teaches us that suffering comes from resistance. When I accepted solitude as part of my experience, I realized that it wasn't as frightening as it seemed. It was uncomfortable, yes, but it was also a space where I could explore my emotions and thoughts honestly. One practice that helped me a lot was mindfulness. During moments of solitude, I began to pay attention to my breath, the sounds around me, and the sensations in my body. This brought me into the present moment, distancing me from thoughts about the past or the future. It was amazing how something as simple as being present could bring so much comfort. Moreover, the concept of impermanence gave me hope. Buddhism reminds us that everything is transient, including solitude. Knowing that this feeling wouldn't last forever helped me deal with it more lightly. Each moment of solitude was just a wave in the sea of my experience, and I could learn to surf those waves. Transforming solitude into something positive does not mean it disappears, but it means that it ceases to be a burden and becomes an opportunity for growth. This shift in perspective was liberating for me, and I believe it can be for you too. One of the greatest teachings of Buddhism is that connection does not depend on being physically close to others. It starts within us. When I realized this, my relationship with solitude changed completely. I learned that I could feel connected even when alone, and this brought a peace I had never experienced before. The loving-kindness meditation was fundamental in this process. By wishing well for myself and others, I began to feel an invisible yet powerful connection. It was as if each thought of compassion was a bridge linking me to the world. This practice showed me that even in solitude, I could cultivate meaningful relationships. Another way to foster connection was through gratitude. I started listing things I was grateful for every day. At first, it was difficult, but I soon realized that even on the loneliest days, there was something to appreciate: the sound of rain, the warmth of a blanket, or the simple fact of being alive. Gratitude helped me see the beauty in small things and feel more connected to life. Buddhism also teaches that compassion begins with ourselves. When I started treating my solitude with kindness instead of judgment, I realized I was building a healthier relationship with myself. This internal connection reflected in my interactions with the world around me. Even in solitude, we can cultivate deep connections. They start within us and expand into the world. No matter how isolated you feel, there is always a way to connect, whether with yourself, with nature, or with others. As challenging as it may be, solitude can be a gateway to inner peace. When I learned to see it this way, my relationship with it changed completely. The silence and emptiness that once seemed frightening became spaces of calm and introspection. It was like finding an oasis in the desert. In Buddhism, we learn that peace does not come from outside but from within. Solitude, then, is an opportunity to look inward and discover that peace. This does not mean that pain completely disappears, but that we learn to deal with it more compassionately and balanced. I remember one day when I felt completely alone. I decided to meditate, focusing on my breath. Gradually, I felt a calm grow inside me. It wasn't a magical solution, but it was a reminder that I could find comfort within myself. It was a powerful moment of self-discovery. Solitude also taught me about acceptance. Accepting what we cannot change is one of the pillars of Buddhism. When I stopped fighting against solitude and accepted it as part of my journey, it ceased to be an enemy and became an ally. It was in that space of acceptance that I found true peace. I want you to know that solitude does not have to be a burden. It can be a path to something greater. Take time to reconnect with yourself, to listen to what your soul has to say. The peace you seek is closer than you think it is within you. Remember, each breath is a new chance to start over. See you in the next video. Take care and be at peace.